Oh, think you know someone after 7 years of sharing a morning coffee in a sunlit kitchen, splitting a heavy mortgage on a suburban house with a manicured lawn and a white picket fence, and planning a future that feels as solid and unshakable as concrete. But then a single rainy Tuesday evening rolls around and the entire foundation of your life completely crumbles beneath your feet. Looking back at Sarah sitting across from me at our quartz kitchen island, gripping her ceramic mug so tight her knuckles turned a stark white, I can still hear the trembling, terrifying certainty in her voice when she confessed that she had never truly let go of Julian, her high school sweetheart, and the wealthy heir to a prominent local real estate empire, who had always been the romanticized phantom lurking in the dark corners of our quiet, ordinary marriage. She looked into my eyes with a dizzying mix of desperate guilt and intoxicating, reckless hope, explaining to me that life with me was safe, comfortable, and devastatingly predictable. But Julian was her unfinished symphony, the passionate soulmate she mistakenly walked away from a decade ago because she had been too young to understand true love. Now that he was back in the city after years in New York, newly single and building a luxury high-rise development downtown, she claimed she felt a cosmic, irresistible pull she could no longer ignore, fully convinced that he had been waiting all these years with open arms, holding a torch for her, just waiting to rescue her from the supposed monotony of our middle-class American existence. I sat there completely frozen in my chair, feeling the oxygen evaporate from the room as she packed 2 large designer suitcases with a chaotic, frantic energy, absolutely refusing to hear my logical pleas, dismissively wiping away her own tears, and utterly blind to the deep devastation bleeding through my forced composure, because in her mind she was no longer a wife making a choice. She was starring in her own sweeping Hollywood romance movie where true love conquers all time and distance, leaving me behind as just a temporary, boring, chapters-long placeholder in her grand, predestined love story. The first 48 hours after the front door clicked shut were a blur of absolute paralyzing agony, a grueling cycle of staring at her empty closet shelves, looking at the half-empty toothpaste tube left on the bathroom vanity, and wondering how a bond built on shared dreams, late-night grocery store runs, sick days where I held her hand and whispered inside jokes could be discarded like last season's fashion trends for a ghost from her teenage diaries. I tortured myself wondering if I had worked too much at the firm, if our weekend trips to the coast had become too routine, or if my love had simply lacked the cinematic flair she apparently craved. But the real reality-shattering shockwave hit exactly 5 days later, when my phone lit up the dark bedroom at 3 a.m. with her name flashing on the screen. Her voice was entirely unrecognizable when I answered, a broken, breathless, hysterical sob coming from a cold, fluorescent-lit diner parking lot just outside the city limits, where she poured out the brutal, unforgiving reality of what happens when a fragile fantasy collides violently with the real world. She had arrived at Julian's luxury downtown penthouse wearing her best dress, expecting a cinematic reunion on a rooftop, a tearful embrace, and an immediate happily ever after filled with champagne and apologies, but instead she found a cold, detached 30-something businessman who had long since evolved past the boy she remembered, a man who viewed her sudden, unannounced arrival not as a romantic miracle, but as an awkward, highly inappropriate, and uninvited intrusion from a high school past he had absolutely no interest in reviving. Julian hadn't been waiting for her at all. He had merely sent a polite, nostalgic response to a social media story weeks prior, a generic compliment that her longing, deeply dissatisfied heart had dangerously misconstrued into a declaration of eternal devotion. And after a couple of profoundly uncomfortable, tense days of her trying to force a teenage spark that had died a natural death a decade ago, he explicitly told her that he liked his independent bachelor life exactly as it was, packed her things into her bags himself, ordered her an Uber to a suburban motel, and slammed his heavy oak door on her illusions forever. Now she was stranded in the dark at a random truck stop, shivering, humiliated, and begging me to come drive out to pick her up, promising through her tears that she had made a horrific, catastrophic mistake, that the glitter had blinded her, that she finally realized. What we had was the real treasure, and that she wanted nothing more than to crawl back into the warmth of our bed, erase the last week, and pretend this nightmare had never happened. Hearing her weep so pathetically on the other end of the line, listening to the person who vowed to protect my heart, now begging me to fix the pieces of hers after another man rejected it, a strange, profound, and utterly unexpected stillness washed over me, completely replacing the burning anger and the hollow ache with an icy, crystal-clear clarity that I never anticipated. I realized in that quiet moment, listening to the distant hum of trucks through the receiver, that the woman I loved wasn't actually the woman begging on the phone. The woman I loved was a fiction I had spent 7 years creating, a loyal partner who respected our sacred vows and valued my heart, whereas this real living person had willingly, excitedly burned our entire life to the ground on the mere gamble of a richer, shinier, more glamorous option. She didn't realize my worth because she suddenly appreciated me. She realized my worth because her first choice didn't want her, and she was looking for a safe harbor to nurse her bruised ego and wounded pride. As I sit here writing this script of my own life, watching the golden autumn sun slowly peek over the horizon and illuminate the quiet, empty spaces of our living room, I find myself standing at the ultimate definitive crossroads of my existence, caught between the old instinctual urge to rush out into the night and be her savior, and the powerful awakening roar of my own reclaimed self-respect. I look at our wedding photo on the mantel, and for the first time, I don't feel sadness. I feel a liberating sense of detachment, knowing that true closure doesn't mean fixing what someone else intentionally and selfishly smashed to pieces, nor does it mean letting yourself become a silver medal or a consolation prize for someone who treated you as a backup plan. I know that if I open that front door and let her back into my life, every look, every touch, and every quiet evening will be poisoned by the knowledge that she only came home because the penthouse door was locked, and a man cannot build a kingdom on the ashes of his own dignity. So while my heart still bleeds for the tragic loss of what we used to be and the innocent love I thought we shared, I am actively choosing to take a deep breath, hang up the phone, and step forward into the unknown dark, alone, leaving the ruins of our marriage exactly where she left them, and choosing to walk away with the one thing she could never quite take from me, my own unshakable worth.